Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lecture 7, Materials Part 2. So I love materials. Materials are really fun, and that's why I volunteered to teach this lecture for you guys today. So we already jumped into materials, right? Are you guys practicing your reflectivity, your specular, your roughness, all that? Didn't jump right into color, right? Good. Good. Okay, so now we're basically going to do glass today. But glass is its own special, I don't want to say monster or beast, but it's its own special superstar. There we go. So basically, we're going to have to learn about transmission and refraction today. And we're not just doing glass, though. We're doing some wine as well. This is the schedule. So just a reminder, you guys will have class in here on Friday, but Sunday we will be all in Zoom. I will be teaching that one as well, so you guys will get me as well. And we will talk about some substance after Tony does the Intro to Textures lecture. And then I will be back here Monday for lecture 10. And then you'll have one more lecture in this room before you all go home for Christmas. Who's going north? Two hands.
I'm going south.
You're going south?
Pt1? No, not that far. Oh. We're just going to like Boca.
Okay.
Oh. Texas.
You guys going? Well, that is north of here.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
How far north are you guys going?
I'm going to Virginia.
Okay. Might see some snow up there.
Yeah, that's where I used to live.
Yeah. Hey, I grew up in Southern Illinois, so I'm no stranger to the concept. And I visited Iceland, where it did snow. It was amazing. If you've never thought about going to Iceland, think about it one more time because it's a great place. Okay, so reminder, Discord hours. So Tuesday, 10 to 12, and Thursday, 10 to 12. I guess that's when you're on usually, Tony, right?
It's 10 to 4. I just pick off.
Oh, and then, okay. So 10 to 4, 10 to 4. Frank does 1 to 5 in Zoom on Thursday. Do not forget about that. He gets lonely in there. Sometimes I come in to keep him company. And my office hours, by the way, are Monday 1 to 8. I realize you guys can't do 1 to 5. And then you're in here the rest of that, aren't you? So I do Monday and Friday when you're in this room. So I guess you can't really utilize that. But I am sometimes on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. I don't really put that out there because those are unscheduled office hours. If you see me in Discord, I am more than happy to help, although I may not be able to screen share outside of my posted office hours. So today we are talking about transmission, refraction, glass, and some vino, wine. Tomorrow we are going to have, tomorrow project 6 is due. Is that right, Tony?
Yep.
Okay. And your materials discussion and your research discussion. Have you gone over the research discussion already? Usually, okay.
I did.
So usually you do that in lecture 4, but since we didn't do lecture
No,
4, lecture 6, okay. Okay, so let us talk about light rays for a little bit. I know Tony talked to you a little bit about how this works on Monday when we're talking about how light rays bounce off materials. And I didn't watch the recording, but I'm betting he talked about how light rays scatter when you're using a rough surface, right? All right, so glass is a little bit unique because light rays pass through it, but it's important to remember that they don't just pass through it, they kind of change direction and bend every time they pass into or out of a surface when they transition. So let me get my little drawing tools up here. I like to use the arrows. So use blue. Actually, they're light rays. Let's use yellow. So let's say we have a light ray coming along and it's going to hit here. And then they usually change direction. And then when they pass through again, they change direction again. So this gives it kind of a warped look as it's passing through. And thicker glass will have thicker distortion. Yeah, that's typically how it works. Keep in mind, we don't tend to think of it this way, but air has an index of refraction too. We're just, as human beings, we're used to considering that all the time. So our default refraction is not 0, it's the refraction angle or index of refraction of air. But then again, I guess we don't see it really transition from property to property, so it doesn't really get distorted as much. And what's your next slide? Oh, I was supposed to do that demo here.
Yeah, the other one's just transmission straight.
Yeah, so the other one is just transmission straight through. And if a light ray is kind of coming straight at glass, it doesn't really change. But if it has any sort of approach angle, that is when we get, oh, here's Ash. That is when we get our light rays bending, like so. And keep in mind, they do it based on the amount of times they change surface. So I want a tool here real quick. Where's my drawing tools? So they'll do it here and here. So for a typical solid glass object, let's say you had like a glass paperweight that was solid glass, you would have 2 times that it would change direction. And if it passed through like an air bubble, that would be 4. And since I've done glass blowing, I know sometimes you can get the little air bubbles in the middle of the glass. We actually had like a ice pick that we would use to poke into the glass, and you could actually cause an air bubble, an air pocket. It's kind of fun. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about how things work in Maya. So if we do a sphere in Maya and we apply a glass material to that, is that sphere hollow? What do you guys think? Now in Maya, we can totally go in and fly our camera straight in, and we can see that the geometry is in fact hollow. There is nothing inside digitally. But if we apply a material to that, as far as light is concerned, that is a solid object. There is no hollow interior. And when the light ray goes through it, it considers that empty space in the middle to be solid glass. So if you have a regular sphere, that is completely solid. This is why when you model a glass, like a wine glass or a glass bottle or something, you always have to model the interior, at least if you're going to actually like render it. Because the light rays are not going to consider that empty space inside to be hollow unless it passes through another surface. So for example, in our little demo here, if we have our little light ray coming along, so let's say we have our light ray coming along here, then it's going to change angle here and then go across air and change again. And then it'll change and change. If we didn't fill that in, we would get it coming across, and then it would go like this. So we would get, I don't know how I did that. So we would get something like that, which would be really different from the actual refraction we should be getting in a wine glass. Okay, conservation of energy. Tony, do you talk about this in your materials discussion?
Yep.
Okay.
We only talk about diffuse and reflection.
Right. So we're adding another calculation to this conservation of energy equation. Before, we were only talking about diffuse and spec and how you had to balance out those so that you don't go above 100% energy. Now we're going to add transmission. Fortunately, we usually turn diffuse color off, which means we're not going to be using diffuse color at all, which means I could go up to that diffuse color and I could make this hot pink, I could make this purple, and it would not change the color of the glass at all because we're completely disabling it. It's the weight?
Yeah, not color.
Oh, right, we're disabling it by turning the weight off. Sorry, in my head, that's how I think of it. I'm disabling it. You could also turn it to black, which is kind of the same thing, but weight is kind of more the mathematically correct way to do it. Yeah, keep in mind that that transmission and that refraction is going to take up some of that energy as well. So we can't have that going over like 200%. Now, these are typically working together. So we're probably going to keep them pretty much, I think we pretty much keep both of them at 1 for the most part, which kind of goes against my analogy, but that's Arnold. Okay, now specular color, specular weight, and specular roughness do have an effect on how your material is going to work. Just to make sure, I actually toyed around with this last night to make sure that I was correct. There is a slight change if you change your specular color or you change your specular weight. Depending on your reference, you may need to change that, but typically I end up leaving this white. But that's all based on your reference. And there are some glasses where you will need to change that. But that's pretty unusual. Roughness, however, we are going to be using. So, since we were talking about glass blowing earlier, does anybody know how they make frosted glass? That's how you make fake frosted glass. But good answer. So actually the way that you're supposed to do it is you actually sandblast it. Which is basically adding surface roughness to glass. So when I started actually learning 3D and learning about roughness, I thought that was pretty cool, that I was like, oh, that totally makes 100% sense. Because when I was in my glass blowing class, we literally took our glass and we taped parts of it up so that it wouldn't get sandblasted. And we took a giant sandblaster and sandblasted the heck out of it and then removed the tape. And we had clear, pristine glass in one area and frosted glass in the other. So we're going to be putting our roughness into specular roughness as well as in transmission. You got to do it in both. So this is, Tony has an example here of what it looks like when we're doing it in specular only. And I know you have an example, here we go, of an example of when we do it in both. And this is more accurate to what it should look like. We'll come back to that slide. So transmission weight is kind of a multiplier, just like specular weight and diffuse weight. Transmission color, that is where we're going to put our glass color. Do not try and turn diffuse back on and put it in there. I get students that do that occasionally. You don't want to do that. So transmission weight, we're actually going to do some special stuff with. So glass works pretty okay in Arnold, but as Tony and I found out, you don't get the correct shadow at all by default. So Tony did a bunch of cool research and he found out a really cool way to get that back. We just have to use a couple of nodes inside of the hypershade to be able to make that work. And we'll demo how to put those up. But basically, we're going to use the gamma correct node and the sampler info node to kind of create that connection so that we get the correct shadow. And it should, if you have any color in your refraction, your shadow should have color to it too, which is what we're trying to pull off. Weirdly, if you don't do this extra step, you just don't have a shadow to your glass, which makes no sense. And so this is just showing we need to do spec rough and extra roughness in transmission. I don't know why they call it extra roughness. That's always seemed weird to me. So, and one last step that we'll need to do is we'll need to go in and we'll need to change the indirect specular from, I think 1.0 is the default, right, Tony? Yeah. We're going to change it to 1.1. We also will do an extra step for glass windows. So most of the time when you model windows, they're just a simple plane. And they put this feature in because there are guys who do ArchViz and architectural visualization. And they make tons and tons and tons of windows. And they don't want to have to set up windows that actually have the correct amount of thickness. So what they do here is they have this thin walled setting. What this is for is it is meant for windows because it will take one plane and it will make it a super thin double-sided piece of geometry. So it'll have a very slight extra refraction correctly if it was a window. You can also make a cool bubble with it by taking a sphere and put it on there. So I always like this slide, Tony. So this is a cool slide because it talks about the different indexes of refraction. We're going to be using, for glass, we're always going to be using 1.5 or 1.52. The correct index of refraction for air is 1.0, and then water is 1.3.3.
1.3, and then you'll see different places have different numbers.
That's fairly close to 1.
Yeah.
Depending on the type of wine. And then diamond, which we won't be using, is much higher at 2.42. So I'm going to slow down and take a second. I tend to move a little bit faster than Tony because I work with the online and we have a much shorter amount of time. So I know I've been going a little bit faster than Tony goes. So I want to take a minute to slow down here and see if you guys have any questions about what I covered so far. No? Okay. So let's talk render settings. Up until this point, we probably haven't been using transmission at all. I think it might have been used in the human head. We have it turned on in there, right?
For transmission, no, we use subsurface scattering.
Okay, so it doesn't use any transmission at all. I thought so, but I wasn't sure. So for, it's the same here as pretty much everything else. When you have your transmission set to 2 or 3, that's kind of like a preview quality. You would never actually render out with that amount. 4 is kind of medium quality. 6 is like medium high. 8 is super high. You would never go higher than 8. But based on your render times, you might actually need to go lower. Samples, the idea is you're supposed to test them at lower settings and see if it looks any good. If it doesn't look good, go higher. I have a lot of students who are always like, but what's the right answer? Well, the right answer is different per scene, and you have to kind of figure that out. Oh yeah, and we need to set the ray depth. I almost forgot. So in your render settings, under ray depth, you're going to have settings for specular and transmission. You want those to go pretty high. They should always equal the total. So for diffuse, specular, and transmission. Sometimes we have to raise that total to 12 to get a little bit more out of our spec. Not our spec, our transmission. And the reason we would do that is usually this. So every time a light ray passes through a glass surface, it's going to use up some of our transmissions right here. Correct, Tony? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that was it. So by default, let's take our empty wine glass. How many transmissions is that going to use? Come on, guys. Correct. Good job. So by default, it's going to use 4. And what do we have wine in that wine glass? 6, right. Because now we have a fluid in there, and each time it goes in and out, it adds another one. What if we have 2 empty wine glass sitting in front of an empty wine bottle? Good job. 8, which, here's the spoiler, we do have that. In the exterior scene, the wine glass is in front of the wine bottle. Is this another slide, or do I talk about this here real quick in my head? Nope, it's here. All right. So let's talk about this thing. This squiggly thing right here. I always get a kick out of listening to Tony talk about this in the videos. That is called a Klein bottle. And it is an interesting shape, to say the least. Let me grab my Google window here. So Klein bottles are this very interesting, weird shape. There's a good picture of one. And it is super difficult to do this with traditional glass blowing. Not impossible, but super difficult. And I'll tell you, the 16 weeks I took was nowhere near the amount of skill necessary to pull that off. Nowadays, they can do it much easier because they have injection molding. But look at this thing. It goes up and it comes down inside of itself. For years, this was kind of theoretical, but modern science, you can do it with injection molding, and now we have 3D printing, which makes it even easier. But let's take this shape right here. How many transmissions do I need just to pull this off? 8. Where did my one go that had the liquid inside of it?
Here it is, left.
Oh, here it is. What about this one? 10. Which means we would need to increase our transmissions in Maya because we need 1 sample for spec and 1 sample for diffuse. So we need a minimum of 12. But a lot of people are really into these Klein bottles. I don't know what's going on, but don't look too far down the rabbit hole on Google. You will find what I like to call the cult of the Klein bottle. There are people just obsessed with these things.
How exactly did you put liquid?
What'd you say?
How exactly is liquid
That's my favorite.
Should I tell the joke?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Tony thinks, he's like, it would always be funny to have a party, get a bunch of these things, and every time your guest shows up, just give them 1 Klein bottle filled with liquid to drink from, and watch them try to figure it out. And then how you get it in there without using a tube, I don't know.
You can actually drop water, because you put it in through the bottom. There's an opening in the bottom, but you have to turn it as you put it, and hope there's not a bubble of air.
Yeah, you
blocking.
need it. You need exposure for the air bubble to get out.
Ideally, you get a tube, put it in there, a thin enough tube, fill it up with liquid, and pull it out. That way you don't get air trap.
So the only way to actually drink out of it would be to give someone a bench straw.
And they make really long Klein bottle bending straws.
Of course they do.
Oh, wait, if you like hold it upside down and you have like the bendy straw and it's already a handle.
Yeah, it is.
It does have its own handle. That is nice.
And then you get people that just get angry and break it.
So the reason we're bringing all this up is because as you increase those transmissions in your render setting, what do you think also goes up? Your render time. So just this same scene, we've gone from 1 hour and 6 minutes to render this, and this was on worse computers with a worse render, because I think you rendered this with Mental Ray, right?
No,
Okay.
I did it with RenderMan.
Okay, with RenderMan, which is a better renderer, but on worse computers. We rendered these, and this took 1 hour and 6 minutes with all the materials applied. This one, same scene, with a camera angle that has less room in it, by the way, less stuff it's rendering. Just because this bottle is now in front of this, we had to increase our samples, and it increased our render time from 1 hour and 6 minutes to 2 hours and 11 minutes. That's very close to double.
And by the way, Arnold's not like that.
Arnold, well, that was rendered with RenderMan,
Yeah.
so Arnold is worse. But that was on a crappier computer. And I will tell you this, you guys have noticed the render times go up since you added materials, right? Glass is going to increase that render time as well. This is why you guys been using the crop tool when you're testing out your materials to render it. Please continue using that. Once I start using glass, I won't even demo without using the crop tool, because I'm like, I am not rendering this entire thing and glass. Are you kidding me? It's going to take 20 minutes. I will say though, our computers are a lot faster now, and these do render pretty well. We're also using denoise to kind of cut our render times down, so that helps as well. And don't forget, you should be using denoise to kind of lower your render times. That's why you can probably get away without using 8 in your rays or your samples. You might be able to get away with using 4. Probably going to have to use 6. But try 4 and see if you can get away with it. Actually, you can probably get away with using 4 in the long shots and having to use 6 in the close shots, I would bet. But render it. Look if there's noise. If there's noise, obviously you need to increase your samples. Okay. So this is our guide slide for creating glass. There are 12 steps. That was 13. Oh, it is 13 if you count this one. No. I thought it was 13 steps, honey. 12 steps for creating glass.
It's actually 11 if you're not doing window glass.
Well, it's 10 if you're not doing color. So you're doing clear glass, it's easier. But that colored glass just looks so good. Yes, I will do that during the break. I will send it to you.
I can do that now.
Okay. So while we're talking about colored glass, do you guys know how they make colored glass? Because glass is by nature, normal glass that they make out of sand is clear. They add colored dust in it, like powder. The amount of powder is the amount of thickness of the glass, you know, the saturation. Or in our case, because we were cheap when I was doing the glass blowing class, we go and find colored glass bottles at the recycling center, and we put those in the glass, and that gives it the color. All of our clear glass was recycled glass too, which is also good for the environment. Yeah, the color comes from other materials that are usually they're ground into a powder, but sometimes you could just take a big old chunk of another material and melt it into the glass, and it would melt in and colorize it. Tony, thank you for sending them the slide.
Yep.
Oh. So don't forget, guys, you can always use the Discord for getting feedback. I want to talk to my online students who are hopefully watching this video as well. For Project 6, please use the Discord to get feedback, because Project 6, there's a lot more freedom with you guys getting your own materials. There's also a lot more margin for error. And we see a lot of students whose grades go way down on this project. But if you get critiques, pretty much everybody who gets a critique on the Discord channel, their grade is usually an A. But with students who don't get critiques, their grades can be much lower, much lower. So please use the critiques channel. You guys, and online, I'm looking at you online students. I don't know if that's recording, but I'm looking at you. Break time. It's not break time. It's way too early for break time. Yeah. So let's do some demo. I'm going to get my index of refraction website up, because never know when you might need it. All right, first step, we need to look for some wine. Yes.
Correct. because there is geometry in the glass for the wine, but the bottle is.
Yeah. If you were to do wine in a wine bottle, don't do it in this class because you're not allowed to model. But if you were to do wine inside a wine bottle, you would need the geometry modeled in there as well. Because it needs the geometry to know that it has to change the refraction angle again. Also, the wine would have a material on it, which would have a different index for refraction so that your refraction was correct. What do you think, Tony? This one's not bad. It's a large image.
Well, personally, I always like to get one that's got one of these. In it.
You did do that in the demo.
Yeah, red and white. That way you can choose which one you like.
The right side.
Oh, that's a good one. It's nice and large. See if we can open it in a new tab. Perfect.
Did
Lectures.
everybody get the slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to put it in my master reference folder, all my references. Or rename it because that's just so long of a name. Can't use an ampersand. You know, while we're here, we might as well get a wine bottle too, because we're going to have to do that. Spell things correctly, Tony. Outside.
Recording in progress.
We have to do an empty wine bottle. Can I hear myself?
No, that's me.
You know, it's funny. I find so many DIY things when I'm trying to Google wine bottle images. I've discovered there's a lot of uses for empty wine bottles in the DIY community. I like this one. It's got candles inside, but that shouldn't be a problem. I saw one really cool one once where you could actually cut all the bottoms off the wine bottles and make a path. It would cost a lot of wine bottles though. Okay, do we need any more reference? Let's get a frosted glass window. Wait, not frosted glass. There is a frosted glass window that I've been seeing when I talk about reference that I kind of want to try. Tony, I really want to make this window. It would require a texture.
It would. And 4 places.
4 places?
Each of the roughnesses is needed in the transmission.
Oh, I see what
You
you're
also
saying.
need to inspect the
Would the transmission change where the frosted is?
slider. Actually, no, you know what? It might be a slight, you might need an index of refraction.
Because it's not changing material.
No, it's not changing material, but it's changing how it behaves.
Okay. I'm just going to save that. We're not going to do that today because we haven't even gotten into texturing yet. That's too much. Where is my, got some yellow dots hanging out. Okay. So with that done, let's open up Maya. Okay. So we have our project 5 scene. We're going to do some material work. 5. Now don't forget your table setting is on a different layer. And you'll have this wine label. You'll want to hide this for project 6 and bring it back for project 5. There's 2 ways to do it. You can actually press Control H and just hide it, but then you're going to have to find it to bring it back in. And I believe that's not that hard. Yeah, here it is. Wine label Geo. Or you can make a new display layer. Assign that to there, and then hide it. So let's go ahead and let's start with the wine glass, which is the easiest one. That's not correct. Command T, Shift T. There it is. I always right click and go down to the menu, but I have a big monitor at home, so it's easier to do that. Okay, so we're going to need a new Arnold surface. I've placed my AI standard surface in my favorites. Do you guys know how to do that? I'll show you. It's real easy. So just go to your Arnold area, find your AI standard, right click, and you can go add to favorites. And then anytime you want it, it's right up here. I've also done that with my sampler info and my gamma correct. Where are those at, Tony? Because I usually just search for them.
They're under Maya.
Okay, see, I search for them normally.
Yeah, just go down. No, under Maya, you should be able to see it.
My am I blind? Where's the utilities? That's why I don't like it, because I swear I'm very blind. Maya surface volume BXD.
Oh, you know what? You can't get it for assigned material. You can only do it. You can only get
Okay.
assigned paper sheet.
Well, I got them here anyway because I favored them.
Yeah.
So let's just assign our standard surface. And get that over here. There we go. Always rename them. Clear glass. Because we shouldn't be building our materials based on objects, but instead on material types. Okay, so first thing first, let's go ahead and turn that off. Actually, you know what? Let's get out that glass guide that Tony gave us. Just in case I make a mistake. I have that thing saved right here. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put it on another window over here in case I need it. Okay, so turn off our diffuse. Pretty much leave our spec on. Actually, let's turn that back on. This is the way Tony normally demos it. I'll do it that way. Okay. So we'll turn our weight off. We'll leave our spec on. I'm going to lower the roughness because that's a lot of roughness for wine glass. I keep those things pretty pristine. We're going to leave it at 1.5. Technically, we could change it to 1.52, but 1.5 is close enough. Increase the transmission. Now, that looks like pretty good glass, doesn't it? But there's one major problem. Look at our shadow. We have a floating wine shadow. And honestly, if it wasn't for that shadow, we could pretty much be done with it. But we need to fix the shadow. So first off, so here's what we do. Go into specular weight, options box, checker box. Now we're going to need the gamma correct node, which should be in utilities. I've got it in my thing here. But just so you guys can see where it is, both the gamma correct node and the sampler info node are here in utilities. Sampler's right there. Yep. So sampler I already saw. There it is. There's the sampler. There's the gamma correct. You can also just search for them up here. This is why I favorited them. We're going to go there. The connection editor will open up. Don't freak out. We're going to go into out value. We need out value X. And then we need transmission. And that's going to make it black. Go ahead and close that. We need to set gamma X to 4. These next two to 0. And it's still black. Our shadow's back though, so that's good at least. Now we're going to go to the options for value. And now we're going to use our sampler info node. We need facing ratio and value, but we can't do value there. Value X. Close, and look, our shadow's back. Pretty good. Pretty good. Doesn't look right in the viewport, but the viewport is, it's whatever. We don't really care about the viewport. Okay. So we want to go into advanced, and we want to change indirect specular to 1.1. and we want to check our render settings. Where are they? Oh, that's not good. Not 54. What are you doing? And go to ray trace, ray depth. And so right now we don't need more than the default. We're probably going to need more though. So for right now, I'll leave this. But as soon as we get to a point where we need more than 8 transmission, I'm going to update it. So overall, actually, overall, we're looking pretty good. All right. Next up, let's do the wine in the wine glass. It's actually really annoying to select. But there it is. And so Shift T, Arnold, AI standard material. By the way, I put MAT in front of all the materials that I use. That's not something you have to do. It's just something I got used to when I was working in Unity on my first ever game project I was working on. And it kind of stuck. Okay, so we have our reference. Actually, let's get our reference out. We'll leave it here. Okay. So we're going to follow the same steps for making glass. The only big difference is we're going to have a different index of refraction, and that's going to require some Googling. Okay. Let's go ahead. We'll set the weight to 0. Now we have black sludgy wine. We'll set the transmission to clear. Actually, now I have to stop already because I don't know what my index of refraction is. So we have to make a decision now. What color wine do we want? Red or white? White? Okay. The crowd zigged when I thought they would zag. Where's my window? Did I forget that? Did forget that. That's my bad. Oh yeah, you have to do that. Otherwise, the specular does nothing. Thank you, Tony. Where is my Google window? Nope, not that one. Give me a sec, guys. Oh, I found it. Never mind. Right here. So there's a bunch of websites we can look at. Hopefully they're not going to make us try and sign up for anything to get the index of refraction of wine. Oh. Well, there you go. I'm not sure which ones are red and white, though. 12 red wines. Also, usually red wine has a refraction index of like 137. So that is a little suspect. I don't like that because it contradicts the other research I've done. Oh, there it is. This is the one I like. So this is actually sourced from a different scientific website that went down. And one of the CG artists who also does wine managed to preserve it for us, which was helpful of them. Whoever that is, I'm grateful. This guy. This person. So as you can see, the index of refractions for red wines is usually, oh, it's 1.337 or 1.339. I had the decimal off in my head. Typically, red wines are a little bit higher by, 0.002 than white wines. White wines are a little bit lower. So we've got 1.337, 1.338, and that's it. So because it's 1.3379 and 1.3381 and 1.3389, I'm just going to go with 1.338. Because we can't get further than the fourth decimal place anyway. There we go. Now we can start rendering it again. Looks kind of groovy. So let's go ahead and do the crazy, not crazy, but let's go ahead and do the transmission weight, and then we'll come back and change the transmission color. So let's go ahead and plug in our friends. Gamma correct. Out value X. Transmission. Close. 4. Actually 0, 0, 0. And then the value, we'll plug in our sampler info, facing ratio, value X. Close. And then we'll make sure that we go in here, turn on our caustics, indirect specular. Okay. The last thing is the step I skipped, which is color. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change the color. You can just use the color picker from here, but because I don't have enough screen space, that is actually going to be very difficult. So you can just use it and go in color pick. I'm going to use instead the advanced color picker, and I'm going to just load my reference image right into the advanced color picker. Lecture project. Reference. Red and white wine. And so let's find a nice spot. You want to meet a middle tone. Don't go too dark. You can look right off the bat. That looks kind of wrong. And don't go too bright. So you want to find a nice mid-tone, which we have a nice one here with this kind of reflection. Leave that there. Make sure to click done. And now, beautiful wine. We even have our yellow reflection. It looks good. Pretty satisfied with that. Let's let it finish rendering. Okay. So next, of course, we're going to do the wine bottle. Shifty, right? Oh, yeah. Reduce the weight. Our index of refraction is 1.52. Our roughness. And then I'll increase the transmission here. I'm actually going to check my slide to make sure I'm not skipping anything. Got the reference, AI standard material, base weight, specular color, specular roughness, index of refraction, transmission weight. Okay. Wait, I didn't do that right. All right, 400, click the checker box. And now we're going to get our sampler info, facing ratio, value X, close, and we have our shadow. Nice. And don't forget 1.1 and caustics. And finally, we need our transmission color. Advanced color picker, load. So what do you guys think? Do we want the light green or the dark green? The what? Try and find a nice middle area. Don't forget, you may have to make adjustments here. That actually isn't bad. I think it should be a little bit lower in value based on or a little bit higher in value based on our reference. So I'm going to increase that to 9.5 and lower the saturation to 3.5. because our bottles here are a little bit more desaturated. Done. Okay. I'm actually a little surprised. Oh, okay. It's because we're very lucky. The refraction angle of the wine is actually moving the refraction away from the wine bottle. So we're not getting any black in our render here. Because otherwise, I'm actually surprised. I was expecting to have to go in and raise this 2 more. I need to increase it here. Yeah, that's what I was expecting. Means we have to increase this to 12, right? I thought it would literally turn black. Sometimes it does that. So let's just let our render do its thing. In fact, I'm surprised this room isn't freezing. I was in 4B beforehand. It was cold. It's actually kind of hot in here. That is the opposite of the time you would want the AC on. Do you guys have lab in the same room? That is weird. We think it'd be on during the day when it's actually hot out. As the sun beating on that wall.
Yeah.
That would be why. All right, guys. That's a little bit earlier than I was expecting because I was kind of hoping we'd be at 12:30 before I got to this point. So we're gonna do the interior obviously when we get back from break, but I wanted to ask if you guys had any questions, anything you wanted me to go over at this point. You want to see me do the frosted glass? It's really not hard. It's 2 settings in the material. So, you know what? We're done rendering. Let's save this and we'll make our bottle frosted glass just for fun. We'll still do it on the window and the inside. There's our.
Remember, if you're doing frosted glass,
You do.
and for project 6, you don't want frosted glass. But for project 7,
Yes, no frosted glass in project 6, by the way. Project 7, you can do it, but you do need reference for it, which is why I went and got a reference for that frosted glass window. Because different glasses have been sandblasted for different amounts of time, so they have different amounts of roughness in there. And it could be the same type of glass, it's just going to have different roughness based on what they've done to it. And then they have that cheap stuff in the can that you can spray on it, which is not really frosted glass, but I don't know. Would you change the index of refraction for that, Tony? Because that's not real glass anymore. Yeah, but that cheap stuff you spray on it, that's not glass. Okay, I was gonna say because that's not glass anymore. Yeah. Yep. This is why they should make you guys take a science class before this class, or at least a photography class. It's funny when I started teaching this class and I was like, man, all that useless glass knowledge I have is now useful again. I was just saving it in case I had to handle glass and didn't want to burn my fingers. Okay, so let's make this frosted glass. It's real easy. So let's go ahead. I'll reactivate the IPR. And so let's just increase this to like 0.2. And then we'll do the same to our extra roughness here. By the way, frosted glass does increase the render time a little bit more. Because before it was calculating the light rays together because they weren't really scattering. But now that it's roughness, the light rays scatter. But they do still penetrate because as you can see, our shadow is green. If they weren't penetrating and going all the way through, sorry, penetrating is not the correct terminology, refracting through, then our shadow wouldn't be green anymore. So that's it. That's how you do roughness. But we'll still do the window inside. Anything else you think I should cover, Tony? Anything I missed? It wouldn't hurt, especially if I had any metals in the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Fix that a little bit. Okay. Let's turn this back down. Ooh, there's that AC. Transmission didn't take? Oh, no, I needed a extra 0. Oh, I didn't save that one.
Yeah, you did down at the bottom.
Oh, that was before we changed the specular. Yeah. It's a little different. The color's different.
It gets a little brighter inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Reference is always king, guys. All right, well, I guess if there's no questions, we can go on break a little early. How long you usually do break for? About 30 minutes, right? 20 minutes? Okay. All right, guys. So that's the deal. We're going to come back at 2:45. And I'll do like Tony does and go over to my keynote. That's not keynote. Where's keynote? All right. And you guys are free for break.